What's up, everyone? So today we're reviewing Game of Thrones by George R. R. Martin. I'm not gonna lie, this one took me a while to read because I was super into it, and then I just kind of it's one of those things where it's like I kind of know how this book is gonna end, so the last like 3 chapters took me longer than I want to admit to finish. But I got some notes here because it's a long book and there's a lot of points of view. So what's different about Game of Thrones? So I guess semi spoiler warning, maybe not. I'm gonna try not to spoil too much, but a lot of the stuff that happens in this book happened in the show, and if you're like me, you likely watched the show, became extremely disappointed, and now the chickens are just going crazy. So, and all of a sudden you just decide you're gonna read the books for whatever reason. So we got the points of view in this particular book. We have Eddard or Ned Stark, Catelyn Stark, Jon Snow, Sansa Stark, Arya Stark, Bran Stark, Daenerys Targaryen, and Tyrion. So, Eddard Stark or Ned Stark is 1 second. I gotta pause this. Sorry, I had to close my door. The rooster's going crazy. So, Eddard Stark or Ned Stark is the Lord of Winterfell. He's an incredibly honor-bound character. So when King Baratheon comes to basically say, hey Ned, I want you to be my hand, he feels like he owes this to him. Like he can't say no. And Catelyn Stark, also Cat, is very much against him having to go to King's Landing. He doesn't trust the Lannisters, who King Baratheon is married to. So they're up at the book starts with them in the beginning. They're up at Winterfell, and they're going hunting, and then their son Bran ends up falling. Whoa, we can guess who did that. And becoming paralyzed. The people who try and cover up what happened, once they find out he might live, send someone to eliminate him, and he's saved by his dog. So Ned goes down to King's Landing, and he's the hand of the king, and then all of a sudden Robert Baratheon is killed, which puts him in a weird position because he's not very much liked. And before he dies, Robert has Ned take down his last words, and they essentially mean nothing. And Ned is told, you have to bend the knee or basically go to prison. And he's like, this isn't right. So they say, hey, you're going to prison because you're not doing what we said. So, as Cersei says, when you play the Game of Thrones, either you win or you die. So this sets Catelyn off. So keep in mind, Eddard had taken Sansa and Arya to King's Landing. So when this is going down, they're down there. Sansa is very much my least favorite character, and because she's kind of like an annoying teenager. Like she's just not. It's not a character like I have kids, so like it's just not like a character that really I like. I mean, she's kind of whiny. She like sees everything through this like delusion. Like, sorry, my camera died. So, as I said, Sansa's character is just like my least favorite. I just don't relate to her at all, at least in book one. Arya is a bit of a troublemaker, so she's very much also like tomboyish, and she's interested in fighting and learning how to use a sword. So Ned gets her lessons in secret in the castle, and her being, kind of a troublemaker ends up saving her from captivity. So when Ned is jailed, obviously they have Sansa and Arya there as well. So Cersei kind of, is going to use them, not kind of, but is going to use them as bargaining chips. Catelyn obviously is not too happy about her husband and daughter's situation, so she kind of sends out a call to arms. Her son, whose name I don't know why I can't remember it, Robb. So Robb also, he's the lord. He's the current Lord of Winterfell, so he goes off to fight with, his taking Catelyn with him as well, and that leaves Bran and their little brother left at Winterfell because Bran obviously has been crippled. So there's no real Starks left to rule Winterfell while this whole war is going on. They end up taking Jaime hostage. Well, actually, she has Tyrion first, but I'll get to that in a second. So, so they end up getting Tyrion, which their father is not really happy about, but he can't do nothing. Because Tyrion Lannister is essentially, he's a bastard in his own way, much like Jon. But Tyrion really only is loved by Jaime and only has love for Jaime. So he ends up getting captured by Catelyn Stark, kind of coincidentally, and she takes Tyrion to her sister, Lysa Arryn's, and Tyrion wins his freedom through trial by combat. So unfortunately for Catelyn, now her bargaining chip to get her family back is gone. So they're having this war, and they end up taking Jaime prisoner. Now, while this is going on, before this, we have the other technically Stark, technically not Stark, Jon Snow. So he's allegedly Eddard's bastard, and he ends up, Tyrion kind of not really talks him into it, but Jon ends up taking the Black, which is going to be part of the Night's Watch with which his uncle Benjen had done. So his whole purpose in life now is to be a watcher on the wall and protect from this mystical threat beyond the wall, and it's not just wildlings. So once Jon finds out this war is going on, he's kind of torn. Like, I took an oath. I'm supposed to. These are my brothers now. I was never treated much like family at Winterfell anyway, at least not by my mom. But he did have a good relationship with his brothers. And Arya, Sansa doesn't seem to care about him too much. Catelyn hates him because he's allegedly Ed's bastard son, and Ed is supposed to be this very honor-bound, dutiful guy. The thought that he would have a child with someone while he's out on a war campaign with Robert Baratheon, to her is unbelievable, and kind of to a lot of people as well. So I'm kind of all over the place, but he ends up, having to decide what is his real duty is, whether it's to stay with the brothers in the Night Watch or to try and run away and fight and die as a Stark, even though he wouldn't. But Jon has fallen into favor with Lord Mormont, who is, the most senior brother of the Night's Watch. And Jon really wanted to be a ranger and is upset when he's essentially because his uncle Benjen is a ranger. He's upset that Mormont, that he's going to be in the stewards instead of the rangers. And his friend Sam Tully tells him, my dad used to keep my brother close so he could learn how to rule the kingdom. I think that's what Lord Mormont's doing with you. Don't take it, kind of personally. I know you want to be a ranger, but you might be in charge of the Night's Watch. So there's a lot going on. I don't want to spoil too much, especially if you for me, I forgot a lot of stuff, even though this was pretty close with the show. And then we have Dany, or Daenerys Targaryen, who's the last of two Targaryens, which is kind of crazy because like just like every other house, like yeah, technically she's the last like Targaryen, but there's a bunch of Targaryen bastards running around, probably all of Westeros, let alone King's Landing. But neither here nor there. So I digress. So she has an abusive brother, and he's using her to get an army, which will in turn get him to reclaim King's Landing and the Iron Throne, because he's the rightful heir. So he ends up kind of trying to use the calls to get that army, without understanding anything about them at all. And it ends up backfiring on him. He sold his sister, to Khal Drogo, and she learns, to love Khal Drogo, but it costs her brother, quite dearly. So she ends up becoming pregnant with Khal Drogo's baby, and she's kind of riding a high note a lot of the middle part of this book, and then it ends in tragedy for her. She had saved this woman, Miri Dasmer, and or Miri Asmer, Miri Asdur, whatever. So she was basically getting raped by all these calls when they not Daenerys, Miri, and she like Daenerys sees this and is like, no, this isn't right. You can't be like raping women. So this she Daenerys is like, I've done a good thing. I've saved her, and she's like, he's basically telling all of the men of Khal Drogo's army that you can't be just having your way with women unconsensually, and they're not too happy about that because that's what they do. They don't see the things that they've conquered as people. Um, so Daenerys is kind of riding her high horse, literally and figuratively, as the Khal's woman, and Miri is a magi, so she is familiar with blood magic, and Khal gets hurt pretty severely, and I think you could see this coming from a mile away. I think, if you're watching this for whatever reason, I'm pretty sure you know what happens. So she's like, please do anything to save him. We'll do anything. And she's like, I'll save him, but it's going to cost you. And she's like, I don't care what it costs. And it's like kind of obvious what it's going to cost. She's pregnant. It's going to cost her something, a life for a life. So she ends up losing her son to save Khal, who isn't even really saved. He's just like basically a vegetable. And she ends up losing not just her unborn son, but her husband as well, on top of the entire army, like everything. All of the, I literally can't remember their name. That's so crazy. The entire, all of the horsemen, all gone. So she ends up, though, once Khal, kind of passes away, she ends up sacrificing Miri, and her dragon eggs hatch. So we then get 3 dragons. George does go kind of crazy with the sexual stuff when it comes to Dany, especially like in the end. It's really spoiler alert here. I'll spoil a bunch of shit anyway, so whatever. So 2 of her dragons are sucking on each breast, and it's kind of like, dude, I don't know, that's a bit much. So, I think that this book is definitely worth reading. What's different about the Game of Thrones series as opposed to something like, we'll say, Lord of the Rings, or kind of any other of these fantasy novels, is that the story is more about the land instead of the people. So like no one's really safe, which can be kind of like depressing or whatever. But it's about Westeros. It's not about Jon. It's not about Ned. Because the whole time, so I would imagine like the first time I'm reading this is like, you know, the people that they're writing about are going to be safe, but you know, then Ned dies, and it's like, and he doesn't even die at the end. He dies in like the last third of the book, and it's like, whoa, you know. So no one's really like truly the main character. Westeros is the main character, so that would be kind of like the way to go about reading these books. You know, I still have Clash of Kings, The Storm of Swords, A Feast for Crows, and A Dance with Dragons. So there's 5 books. There's supposed to be 7. George pretty much wrote a blog post like a week and a half, not even a week and a half ago, maybe a week ago, about basically acknowledging that his fans are pissed off about him doing everything but writing the Winds of Winter, but he then goes on to say, you know, I love everything else just as much as I love, you know, the Game of Thrones saga. So, you know, I'm in no rush to finish reading these because they're not finished and they're not gonna be finished at least anytime soon. So, yes, I read Game of Thrones, but when I'm gonna read A Clash of Kings, I do not know. Just because, you know, like I said, there's other stuff that I want to read. There's other stuff that I'm reading. So right now I'm reading the second book in the Thrawn series and Witcher. So those will be like my next 2 reviews probably. But I'd rather read things that are complete, honestly, or things that are going to be complete. So as far as the Clash of Kings go, I'll read it if everyone wants to see a review on it. If not, I'm probably not going to read it for a while. So thank you for your time, and I'll catch you on the next one.